Slumberjack remix. This is why I'm hot.
Hey guys, my name is Grim, and today I'm going to talk about Stamina Nightblade in the Harrowstorm patch. It's such an edgy name. This patch is, I guess, better than the last one. Things are still just as laggy in Cyrodiil, but at least they're laggy in 60 frames, so I do appreciate that. You know, that's not a small difference. That is a big change, so I'm glad performance is a little bit better, at least in that regard. As for balance, things are not so easy for Nightblade right now, but I still feel like comparatively they're easier than last patch, and if you really like the class, you can make it work. I'm not gonna lie to you, other classes are gonna be better at a lot of things. I'd say there are very few situations that I'm in where I'm like, man, only a Nightblade could have done this, and there are some, but they're fewer and fewer. And what's a bummer about this is that you kind of have to choose exactly what kind of fights you want to get into before you even set up your build. Nightblade, or at least Stamina Nightblade, is less flexible than it's ever been, and that's especially true in groups. If you're interested in playing with your friends, Nightblade has really never been worse. There's very little that they bring to the table in a group, and I would actually say that any other class in the game is going to be better for group play, but that's all right. Stamina Nightblade has always been about playing solo anyways. And while our offensive burst is worse than ever, you can still absolutely make it work. So if you love the class, don't give up on it. You can play it and do just fine. And what is really fun is that this patch, more than ever, people are surprised when you come out as a really strong Nightblade and smack some people. They're impressed. No longer do you get whispers that are like, hey, you're just being carried by your class. That's super OP. Your class is broken. You couldn't beat me on any other class. Now I've been getting a lot more whispers from like Stamina Necros that are like, whoa, and that's satisfying. That's a lot of fun. So things aren't exactly the same, and I wouldn't say that they're exactly good, but there's a silver lining there. So let's talk about what I'm running. And the first thing that we have to do when we talk about what I'm running is talk about the type of fights I'm trying to get into. And those are 1vx fights. And the reason that that is important to know is because this build, like all Stamina Nightblade builds this patch, is really only good at one thing. And you have to make sacrifices in order to do the best that you possibly can in whatever category. So dueling builds and open world builds, very different this patch. Even 2vx builds are going to be really different from 1vx builds. So this is what I'm running for 1vx, and yes, I do play it with my friends, but I play it knowing that it's not optimal, and that if they die, at least then I'm good, right? If they die, then I can get a sweet 1vx clip, and we'll see how that goes. So here's what I'm running. Okay, also disclaimer, this is not a beginner build. This is a pretty expensive build to run, and there are cheaper ways to do it, but I'm running two crafted sets. The first one is New and Acolyte. I'm running that on my front bar with a sharpened maul. I tried out Nern. I tried out a lot of different things. I also tried out Precise, actually, with the Shadow Mundus. And to me, there's no doubt that not only the best average damage, but some of the best potential damage that you can get is with a sharpened Numen Acolyte Maul. Nirn is nice for the healing, but I have so much damage in this build that the difference between Nirn and Sharpen in my healing was not noticeable, but the damage difference actually was noticeable, especially on some of the bigger abilities. The pen does give you significantly more damage, especially in this tankier meta, and since I'm not using Spriggans anymore, having Sharpened is helpful and very noticeable. The second set I'm running is Clever Alchemist, and Clever Alchemist is a second crafted set, but this patch, it's gotten a big buff. For one, the 5-piece bonus's damage is actually higher than it was in the past. It's now 675, and even more importantly, the buff does not last for 15 seconds. Now it lasts for 20 seconds, and that's a huge difference. That allows you to easily get 2 Relentlesses in, and it allows you to like fight a few different people with that buff up. You can use it to go defensive, and then you can turn and go offensive, and you still have plenty of time for it. So when it is down, you lose a little bit of damage potential, but when it's up, like whatever damage you lost just about doubles when it's up. So that works pretty well because it's about, it's up about 1/3 of the time. And if you're using your potions well, it's no problem. Now, I would encourage you, before you gold out any jewelry, try it in purple first, or even blue. Don't gold it out unless you know you love it. You can get a set of purple jewelry if you can craft it, or if you have a friend that can craft it. Getting all 3 jewelry in purple costs around 200,000 gold right now on PCNA. To get it gold is about $1 million. And to me, that's totally worth it. No problem at all. But, if you're newer to the game or tight on money or whatever, maybe don't gold it out until you know you like it. Clever Alchemist is very strong. It's very good. But you have to know that you like the playstyle, because you're going to be down without your Clever Alchemist proc for, a lot of the time. Like 2/3 of the time, you're not going to have the Clever Alchemist proc. And then when it's up, you have to take advantage of it. So you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to be able to take advantage of it when it is up. Now, let's talk about the 2, 3, and 4 lines. 2 and 3 are max health. That's actually super useful. It does mean that theoretically you can run it on the back bar. So say you've got a ton of gold to burn, but you don't have a Master's Bow. You could run Clever Alchemist on the back bar and then run 2 pieces of agility, for example, and that would give you a little bit more max stam. So if you don't have a Master Bow, that's a good option. I'm using a defending bow. I've changed that from infused, which is what I ran in the past, and I did that for 2 reasons. First of all, I'm not running Troll King, and I want to have a little bit more armor, a little bit more defense, because burst is still really high, and without Troll King, it can be hard to recover. And so for that recovery, I'm using really high weapon damage, but with that damage, you need really high defense, and defending helps me to achieve that. Also, since I'm running 2 damage sets and all my damage focuses on the front bar, as opposed to what it was in the past where I ran Poisonous Serpent and could really do a lot of damage with my bow bar, there's no real reason to run an infused disease glyph anymore, because that damage is going to be negligible because I have nothing to follow it up with and nothing to kind of pile on top of it. With Poisonous Serpent, an infused disease damage glyph makes sense, but when you're not using Poisonous Serpent, you're not going to be killing many people on your Master Bow bar, so it's all about either being there for defense or turning onto offense. And for that reason, I'm also using a weapon damage, spell damage glyph. So that'll increase my weapon damage by 350 for 5 seconds. And what is nice about not having it infused is that you can bar swap cancel it. So when you fire and then bar swap, if you're running an infused and you bar swap before the light attack hits, you actually won't get the infused bonus on the glyph unless your 2H is also infused. So having defending allows me to light attack, bar swap, get the normal damage glyph, and then go into an attack right away. Does that make sense? So defending has been working really well for me. I've been playing with it for a while, since Dragonhold actually, and I really like running a defending bow again. It feels very old school, actually. It feels like one Tamriel back when defending was just the meta, and and it is very good still. So I'd encourage you to try it at least. And that way you're not missing out on the infused damage if you bar swap cancel. Maul is still going to be better than Sword in basically every test imaginable. The only reason that I would use a Sword is if I was running Soul Harvest, which is an option, and it's actually a pretty legit option. Since New Moon Acolyte and Clever Alchemist both give you spell damage, and New Moon Acolyte actually gives you spell pen, running a Sword sharpened is not the worst idea if you want to run Soul Harvest. And Soul Harvest is great because it gives you some defile. It gives you major defile uptime. Doesn't hit as hard, but it's an option, and it's not a bad option either. The problem is that obviously as a Maul, Soul Harvest is not going to benefit from the physical pen that a Maul gives you, and it's not going to benefit from 3 infused weapon damage glyphs that I have on my bar. So I'd be losing that damage with Soul Harvest, but I'd be gaining some defile uptime. And it wouldn't be a ton of defile uptime, but it would be noticeable. So I think that's something to consider. I haven't actually tried it yet, but I think it's worth running that if you want to try it out. So let's see. When you're using Alchemist, again, try it in purple, but you could theoretically run it back bar. That's what I was saying originally. I run it on both bars because I think it's really, I have a Master Bow, so I want to run that back bar, right? So that extra agility max stam that you would get does not outclass the Master Bow, in my opinion. I'm still using Venom Arrow because Venom Arrow is a great interrupt. It gives me a lot of ranged options, and it still is allowing me to win fights that I wouldn't be able to win without a ranged interrupt. People are going to be getting reses all the time, and if you can't interrupt those from range, you're going to put yourself in a really bad situation trying to bash them, and you're going to die that way. Or you're going to have to give up fights. Like, you're going to just say, hey, I'm not going to die going in to bash that. They're going to get the res. I'm going to run away. That's the end of the fight. And that's no fun either. I like killing everybody. That's kind of my thing. I want to kill everybody, and Venom Arrow helps me to do that. And since I'm using Venom Arrow anyways, definitely Master Bow is the way. A lot of people have actually been asking me, like, hey, does the Master Bow work with Venom Arrow? Yes, it does. Poison Arrow is actually not poison injection. So in the tooltip here, it says increases your weapon damage against targets affected by Poison Arrow. Poison injection is a morph of Poison Arrow, just like Venom Arrow. So Venom Arrow counts for the Master Bow, and you can use that just as well. It doesn't have an execute attached to it, but it costs less, and in my opinion, does more. Like, that interrupt is a big deal. So that's why I'm using that. And then that way I only have New Moon Acolyte on the front bar. So you can see it's not active on the back bar. And that's because I don't want to increase the cost of my Magicka abilities, which I keep on the back bar. So particularly like Shade and Cloak, adding a 5% to that just doesn't sound super great to me. And since I have to choose one of them to be on the body, I'd rather it be Clever Alchemist. Another reason to have Clever Alchemist up at all times is because you get the weapon and spell damage from the 4-piece bonus on your front bar as well. So technically you're getting more damage than you would with like 2-piece agility, but you're missing out on some max stam. So if you don't have the Master Bow, I might still consider just running like a Willpower Bow back bar and then, whatever. Or you can try running, like, it'd actually be more defensive if you ran one Magicka Recovery Glyph and then put New Moon Acolyte on both bars. Then you'd get the recovery difference back from losing the 5%, and you'd get more damage for your vigor. So you'd get a bigger vigor tick if you ran New Moon Acolyte both bars. And Venom Arrow would do a little bit more damage too, but who cares? It's basically does no damage anyways, so it's only there for the interrupt and to pull people off horses. That's really fun. So those are the 2 sets I'm using. I'm using 4 Impen and 3 Well Fitted. And I do that because I roll a lot, and rolling is a huge part of my defense. If you don't roll a lot, run more Impen. If you roll way more than me, then maybe run more Well Fitted. But just know that if you get caught standing up, you're dead, right? So just be careful with that. That's going to be preference, but I like running 4 and 3 personally. I always run on Stamblade, I always run 2 heavy and 5 medium. And the reason I don't run 5-1-1 is because Stamblades have a passive in the Shadow Tree called Shadow Barrier. And when you cast a shadow ability. It grants you Major Resolve for 6 seconds, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 5,000. That's the standard buff that all PvPers have up all the time, whether it's with like Dragon Scales or Hurricane or whatever it is. Everyone uses Major Resolve, and this is how Stamblade gets it. And it lasts 2 seconds longer. It goes from 6 seconds to 9 seconds. So it lasts 3 seconds longer, when you're running 2 pieces of heavy. And it will last like 7 seconds if you are running only 1 piece of heavy. So for me, 2% more max stats, when my max stats are like really low, is not worth it over 2 more seconds of Shadow Barrier. That's going to make you way tankier for 2 more seconds. That's crazy. Go with the Shadow Barrier buff, run 2 heavy. Not only that, but you actually get more base resistance, obviously, because a heavy piece is going to be better than a light piece. So instead of a light belt, I'm running a medium belt, and then I'm running a heavy chest and a heavy head. The head and legs are actually the same armor value, so you can run a heavy head and chest and be just fine. You don't have to run heavy head and legs. But you can do that too if you want. If you have like medium monster sets, you can mix it up however you want. Just make sure that your heavy are the biggest piece, which is the chest, and then either the head or the legs is ideal. Let's see. You might notice that I haven't been using poisons. You can still use poisons if you want, but I took all of my CP points out of Thaumaturge, so I don't really care for the dot anymore. And I've actually found that the 3.4k like poison damage tick, even though it goes off less frequently than the poisons, does still do a lot of work, and it contributes to my burst. So obviously the idea of running New Moon Acolyte and Alchemist is to have ridiculously high weapon damage and then to kill people in like 1 or 2 abilities, right? So that's what I'm going for with that setup. So, poisons don't really fit in very well to that. If I was to use poisons, you could use poisons that stop the enemy from moving, but I don't really like using those too much because, I don't know, you can't really control who they go off on. They're a little inconsistent. They're funny, but they do cost a lot to craft as well. Otherwise, you could use Minor Defile poisons. Those would be good against tanky people and people that heal a lot, but again, really low uptime, pretty inconsistent. I've just found myself using the poison damage glyph more and more, and it's fine for me. I like it, but I encourage you to play around with it if you have a strong preference about it. I don't really care. It's not a relevant part of my build anymore, poisons, so whether I use them or not, it's just kind of meh, whatever. For my monster set, I'm using Bloodspawn, and I use Bloodspawn for 2 reasons. A, it's nice to have one, it's nice to have a defensive set. Since I'm using 2 offensive sets, all of my defense comes from being able to heal behind a really high effective health pool with lots of armor, and then to turn invisible while I'm doing that is pretty nice too. So my Magicka defense is my mobility and my ability to not be seen. So like Shadow Image is Magicka defense. You'll notice also that it gives me that Shadow Barrier buff in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see me tracking Major Resolve and that Shadow Barrier. So when I use any of my Shadow abilities, which includes Shade, that goes up. So that's 9 seconds. But Shade allows me to reposition, and so that's a big part of my defense. So I'll be like healing, running around, and repositioning, and messing with people, and trying to get my health back, right? Obviously, same kind of concept. You can Vigor and then Cloak, and you're going to be able to heal quite a bit that way without, being seen. So having that high damage, really important for that, and then having the Magicka to Cloak and Shade all over the place, that's going to be the main part of your defense, and Bloodspawn helps with that because it gives you a ton of extra resistance, and it works pretty well with the whole idea of running away. You get this huge resistance buff while you're running at some point, and anyone that hits you during that time is just going to feel like they're hitting a brick wall and nothing's changing. So I like that. Also very important is that it gives me 1 line of stamina recovery. I don't have any other forms of stamina recovery in my build. I'm a wood elf, so I get some recovery that way. I'm using a food that gives me recovery, and I'm using Lava Foot soup for this build. And that gives me recovery, and then blood spawn gives me recovery. Nothing else. So all my jewelry is infused weapon damage to get the most weapon damage that I can possibly squeeze out. And so I feel like this is the bare minimum that I can sustain 1vx. And you can see with like minor endurance up, bam, my recovery is at 2190. That's lower than most people that you're going to see out there. And for me, it's comfortable. It's fine. I, so far in the last like 3 or 4 weeks, haven't died 1vx because I've been stam checked. Now, there are a few times that I deserve to have died for being stam checked, but I just got lucky. But for the most part, if you're paying attention to your resources, you won't get stam checked and you'll be fine. You just have to play around it. You have to be careful and you have to make sure that you keep minor endurance up. Other things that will help you with your recovery, there's a passive in the 2H skill line. And is that Battle Rush? Yeah, so you increase your stamina recovery by 30% for 10 seconds after killing someone. So sometimes, you know, I'll be in a fight and I'll actually kill a guard. And the reason for killing a guard is now my recovery is 2600. And that lasts for a long time. 2600 for 10 seconds. That means that you're going to get 5 ticks of 2600 recovery. And that's a big deal. So let's just back away from him a little bit. I want him to reset because I'm going to use him later. Maybe even the other one will respawn. Go away. Leave me alone. There we go. Okay. So, yeah. If you're like having a hard time sustaining and you're fighting a bunch of people, kill a wolf, right? Run past a wolf, kill that, get another 30% extra stam recovery, or kill a guard or something easy. Kill a mage guard, not a heavy armor guard, but killing anything will increase your stamina recovery if you kill them with your 2H. You don't have to kill them with a 2H ability, you just have to be holding your 2H when they die, and then you'll get that 30%. So that's kind of a big deal. If you're having trouble sustaining, you know, I would make one of these not infused. I would make it something else, like robust or triune, and then from there you can throw a like recovery glyph on it. I would encourage you not to do that though, if you can help it. Like if you can just teach yourself to plan lower recovery, I think that's better. There's an argument to be made for having high recovery and being able to cast more abilities, but I think a lot of times people have poor recovery because they mismanage their abilities. They use them too much, they over buff, things like that. And if you learn to stop doing that, you can sustain yourself by using fewer abilities and just using them more carefully, if that makes sense. Same thing about New Moon Acolyte. I think if you can deal with the 5% increase in cost without changing your recovery at all, then it's great, right? It's a great set, does a lot of damage. But if you are making one of your jewelry an infused stamina recovery glyph so that you can run New Moon, then there's no point because you're losing the 278 weapon damage from here, and it's kind of self-defeating. That the whole point of New Moon Acolyte is to get as much damage as possible. If that 5% is causing you to change the way that you play around your recovery, then don't use it, right? You know, if you've thought about it a lot and you're like theory crafting around it and you find a way to make it work for you, great. I generally think that changing your recovery in order to run this set is self-defeating. You're shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. There's some people that do it because, you know, they want to have crazy recovery on their bow bar or whatever. I mean, whatever. I just think use your abilities carefully and you'll be fine. Let's see. Other things that are worth noting. How do I get to the ideal level of health for me? For me, the ideal level of health is about 25k. That's what I think Stamblade should be running in Cyrodiil. It's going to keep you from getting bursted too hard, and I think it's just about the right amount to stay healthy. I've got a little bit more health on my back bar because of the shadow abilities I have back here. You get a little bit extra health for every shadow ability, and on my back bar I've got 2, and on my front bar I have 1. So health is a little bit lower back here. You could potentially run a different ability here and get that extra shadow back, but I'll talk about abilities later. So how do I get to the 25k health threshold that I think is necessary? I use all triglyphs, and I know this is also now for some reason extremely expensive. It wasn't that expensive in the past, but it is expensive now. So I would actually say don't buy triglyphs. Just go farm out some Hikajo and make them yourself, or have a friend make them. That's going to be way cheaper. The prices are so weirdly inflated, but it's 5k Telvar for each Hikajo. Just do that instead. Or if you have a ton of gold to burn, or just some Hikajoing around. Triglyphs are really great. The reason that you use triglyphs instead of like max stam is just the mathematical efficiency that triglyphs give you. Instead of getting 1,000 resources, you get 1,500, roughly speaking, right? Instead of getting 400, you get whatever, 1,200. You get the idea. So I would never put, if you're going to put a max health glyph on your helmet, then you might as well just put 2 triglyphs on both of these. You're going to have the same amount of health, the same amount of stamina, but you're also going to get 1k magicka. And that magicka is really useful, especially since I'm not using tri-stat food or anything. The more max magicka I can get, the more comfortable I am. So 12k, pretty reasonable. All triglyphs help me get that, and they help me get to my health threshold as well. I'm still using 5 points into health here, just to cross that line to 25k. Not necessary. You can run with 64. You can run with more in health, whatever you're comfortable with. It's all about finding that balance between health and stamina. I don't think that that's part of the meta. It depends on the fights that you're getting. If you think, hey, I'm getting bursted down all the time, just like 100 to 0'd, then maybe try throwing some more points in health. And if you're like, hey, I feel like I don't need this much health, maybe try putting some more points in stamina. You can get rid of these last 5, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. But I like 5. 5 is cozy. And again, I can only really do that because I've got 2 lines of health on Alchemist. So health is always useful. It's just like max stamina. You just shuffle some stats around, and this max health helps me to have more stamina, right? So max stats are good. Especially since New Moon Acolyte actually doesn't give me any max stats at all. So that kind of sucks. Now, let's talk about abilities, and then we'll kind of talk about the damage and how it works. So the first ability I have on my front bar is Camo Hunter. And the reason that I use Camo Hunter is so that I can use tripods. Having that extra Magicka sustain is really helpful this patch, in a way that I didn't really feel it before. And also using tripods gives me the option of running Fear if I want to. I haven't found that I've needed it so much in 1vx, so I've just stuck with this. And I have extra Magicka for like cloaking or shading or whatever. And that works fine for me. I feel like I have a slot for Camo Hunter, but it's probably my flex spot. If I was to do anything else, I might, if I wasn't to put Fear on my bar, for example, say I wanted to put Ambush on here for whatever reason, then I would instead run Crit Pots, which give me health, stamina, and crit chance. So that would just be how I get that extra weapon crit. That's how I get it up to like 45. Because I'm running Fighters Guild, Camo Hunter. Camo Hunter is also nice because it gives me an extra 3% weapon damage. And since I have a ton of weapon damage, it's actually kind of useful. I never thought that 3% would actually like lean my decision in any way, but when you have 7k weapon damage, that extra 3%, man, it's not so bad. So I don't really mind Camo Hunter, and it's nice to have the extra magical recovery. Relentless is a no-brainer. You have to have this on your bar. This is like your main burst ability, and it's crazy. It's also nice because it gives you some defense while you're not firing it, right? So once you fire it, you actually lose a bunch of defense. You lose that like 10% damage reduction. So just be careful of that. It's a really great burst ability, but don't waste it. Use it thoughtfully. It'll last as long as you're in combat. You can just refresh it. It lasts a minute before you even have to recast it. And then it's still like the arrow portion of it's still going to be up. So use it happily, use it carefully so that you keep your defense when you're not going burst. Rally, also a no-brainer. You really need the healing that Rally gives. And so I use Rally and give up having a snare removal because I'm using Shade, so I don't really need a snare removal that much. I also haven't noticed that snares are like super prevalent like they were 6 months ago. 2 patches ago, I felt like snares were a big deal, and just they haven't been. Snares have been nerfed a lot, and now there's a snare on Dizzying Swing, but I really haven't felt like that's impacted me much, so I don't really mind just running Rally and not having Shuffle or anything to remove snares. Surprise Attack, still the bread and butter skill. One of the main reasons I still use it, well, actually, that physical resistance shred, whatever, that you get when you're flanking them is not bad. And since I'm trying to flank them anyways, because of Camo Hunter, like, I feel like this actually comes into play pretty often. It's a nice spammable. It's sort of the Stamblade spammable, like, it's our signature move, right? Bread and butter. So I like it for that reason. I've considered running other things, but just none of them are worth it, honestly. And then finally in my front bar, I'm running Executioner. I'm running Executioner now instead of Killer's Blade because I'm actually executing at 30% or higher all the time now. And it cancels like a dream. Doing an Executioner cancel into, well, I can't cast it without a target, but I want to use one of them. But anyways, doing like an Executioner cancel into a bar swap. So you like light attack, execute, and then bar swap. You know what? Yeah, let's get you over here. Come here. So it's a wonderful thing. So just like that, like, isn't that pretty? Isn't that beautiful? Who doesn't want that? A little bar swap execution into your bow. You can catch people off guard. It's so fast. It's so dirty. I love it. And with as much damage as I get, like the tooltip on that gets insane. So it's got like a 24k tooltip if they're at 0% health. So that still means it's got like a 15k tooltip when you're hitting them normally or more. And honestly, it's way higher because right now I'm totally unbuffed. So you're talking like, on average, your tooltip for it when you're in execute range is going to be around 20k. So that's monstrous, and I really like it. Finally, of course, in cap, I don't like other ultimates. I don't like cast times. Cast times have made this skill so much less fun and so much more clunky feeling, and they need to reverse that. I've kind of given up hope that they ever will, but having a cast time on this just to me still seems completely irrational. The whole point of Nightblade is like single target burst. I do firmly believe that Nightblade should have the best single target burst in the game. That's sort of their class identity. Everyone should be able to do damage, but unlike other classes, Nightblade doesn't have a delayed damage. We don't have a curse. We don't have Power of the Light. We don't have shulks or like Subterranean Assault. We don't have Blast Bones. What we have is Relentless. And Relentless, you still have to cast. It doesn't cast automatically. So that means that you have to hit your in cap and then hit your Relentless very quickly for it to actually work in the same way. You can't force things to hit at the same time, so you need to CC in cap Relentless to secure kills, and having a cast time on in cap ruins that so tremendously. It makes it so much harder to line up burst than with other classes that have some delayed burst. It does make it less predictable, which is good, and it means that you can hold it as long as you want, which is good, but other classes can hold it too, or just reapply. Like, when have you had a sorcerer stop putting curse on you because they're waiting for their burst? No, they're just going to do it every 3 to 8 seconds, right? Like, you're always going to have curse on you, and we don't have that option. So we just have to hold our burst in and then hope that they die immediately when you go for your combo. And if they don't, you're in trouble and you have to reset. So having a cast time on this, very stupid. In PvP, especially from a design standpoint, I just don't understand why you would make in cap have a cast time. It's bad. It's bad. It feels bad. It looks bad. And it makes the class way weaker. Way weaker. Until we have some sort of delayed burst, having a cast time between any of our abilities takes away so much of the potential that Nightblade has. Also, taking away the Defile takes away a lot of the potential that Nightblade has, because, tanks are out there and they are everywhere and they will be invincible. Even with 8k weapon damage and 10k pen, you cannot break through a tank that is healing. Self heals are insane right now, and if someone is on full defense, you're just not going to kill them. And that kind of sucks, right? That sucks. It's not fun. But at least you can rest assured that they're not going to kill you either, right? They've got nothing. But basically, I can kill anyone who's trying to kill me. Anyone who's just trying to stay alive and is going full defense, there's a chance that I just won't ever be able to kill them, right? And that's stupid. We should have to like retreat from each other or something. But there are some people that can just stand there and heal and block, and they're good forever. So that's dumb. Back bar abilities. Let's see. I'm using Shadowy Disguise, which is the version of Cloak that turns you invisible. If you are dueling, Dark Cloak is going to be better, right? It's a better way of mitigating damage in a single target environment where it's just you versus one other person. I think it's way better to mitigate damage and get a little hot than to turn invisible, because they know you're still going to be there. You're going to be like nearby them. You know, you're going to come out of it pretty quickly. It's not super useful. But that changes when you're in a 1vx situation. So just like you have to think about your sets, you have to think about your abilities a lot too. Shadowy Disguise is the best scaling form of defense in the game for fighting Zergs. And this is the reason that at least Stamina Nightblade's defense is still the best 1vx defense in the game. If there's anything that's S-class about Stamblade, it's this ability. It's being able to turn invisible while 8 chumps are chasing you. They're not going to be able to see you, and unless they have some serious AoEs, you're going to be able to get away. Especially if you're like a wood elf with a bow, because you can run really fast and then turn invisible. Or you can use your shade to like poof somewhere else and then run really fast and then turn invisible, or just turn invisible right away. It's a great ability, and it's sort of what gives us our class identity as sneaky boys and girls, right? So this sneakiness from Shadowy Disguise is mandatory in 1vx, in my opinion, right? Like, you can fight without it, but you're going to lose fights that you could win, and you're not going to be able to get away from things when you can't turn invisible. To compensate for my really terrible recovery, I'm using Leeching Strikes. Leeching Strikes actually does a bunch of passive things too. So let's just go through everything that Leeching Strikes provides to my build. One, it gives me a ton of healing while I'm on offense, and that's really valuable because all of my healing is casted ahead of time except for Leeching Strikes. So if you have Leeching Strikes up and you're in all offense, you're still going to be able to heal quite a bit, and that's really nice. You know, you're essentially getting almost 1500 health per second, and it also gives you quite a bit of stamina recovery, and it costs almost nothing to cast. So that's great. Again, I put this on my back bar, which is important, and I do that for 2 reasons. One, as part of the siphoning tree, you get max magicka while you have a siphoning ability slotted. We don't have a ton of max magicka, but it still makes a difference. I don't have a leeching ability on my front bar. I've got 12.3k magicka. I do have a siphoning ability, sorry, not leeching. I have a siphoning ability on my back bar, and it goes up by almost 1,000. So that 8% is doing some work. It's not quite 1,000, but it's like 800, and that's wonderful, right? So this is also, of course, the bar that I use Shade and Cloak from. So if I go on my back bar and use a tripod, I want to get as much magic as possible so that I can, then cloak away or whatever. So Leeching Strikes provides that for me. Another thing it does is it increases my healing done, which is nice for every leeching, oh my gosh, for every siphoning ability on my back bar, it increases my healing. So this will increase my vigor tick, and that's lovely. And then casting it generates 2 ultimate, and that can happen every 4 seconds. So every time you refresh this baby, you're going to get some ultimate back. And that's obviously really nice since our ultimate is so cheap. It helps you to cast in caps more often. Venom Arrow, I talked about this a little bit. The damage, it has damage, right? So it's not completely negligible, but it's close. I don't rely on the damage. I don't think about the damage. And that's why I switched to Venom Arrow over Poison Injection. It doesn't work as an execute, but I don't really care. And interrupting people from range with Venom Arrow is so valuable. I still stand by this. It allows you to win fights that you couldn't win otherwise. and that's really cool. So I like using it, and it catches people off guard. Not only does it stop and interrupt reses, but it sets them off balance, so you can go directly into an attack that's going to deal a ton of damage, and they're going to take 10% more damage if you're in CP from that off balance. It also gives you the option of knocking them down, and knocking people down is great. Venom Arrow also costs less, so that's cool too. It's not that much less, but it's something to keep in mind. And since my recovery is really low anyways, anything that helps me to use less is nice. Vigor, again, just a non-negotiable. You need a self-heal, and Rally by itself is not enough. Leeching Strikes is not enough. You need Vigor. Vigor is like your defensive heal. If you're newer to Stamblade, you use Vigor like you would a shield. You know, if you think you're about to take damage, use Vigor. If you know you're about to take damage, use Vigor. And if you need to heal, use Vigor. Don't wait until it's too late. You know, that's the rule. Don't wait till it's too late. Use Vigor early and often. It's worth the stamina that it costs to cast it. So there's that. My back bar ult is the one I'm most confused about. I've tried everything, and I just can't find a favorite. The one I kind of use by default is Temporal Guard. Minor Protection is pretty nice, and getting a little shield when you block is pretty nice. You know, it's not much, but it's something. So I do like that, and in combination with my defending bow, Minor Protection is nice. Like, I notice it, right? So that's handy. Other good options if you don't want to grind out all of Psijic, because Psijic sucks. You could put Werewolf back there. It's going to give you another 15% recovery, so that's nice. Since recovery is already so bad, if you wanted to put stamina recovery on the back bar, I think that makes sense. A few other options. We used to be able to use Soul Siphon, but that has a cast time on it too now, and I just feel like that takes away a lot of the practicality that it had, so I don't really use Soul Siphon. I can't dodge roll cancel it. It's not a great heal. Instead, I've switched to Reviving Barrier, and I think this is really funny. It kind of works like Soul Siphon used to. It gives you and all the members of your group a 15k shield, and while that shield is up, it heals everyone for 15k health over 15 seconds. So that's about 1k healing per second while the damage shield is up, and at least it's something that you can bring to your group. So when I'm playing with a group, I like to throw this on. It's kind of funny, and it'll heal everyone, and hey, you're contributing to your group. It also means that theoretically you could run Troll King, because now you can heal people again. Stamblade used to be alright in groups, but it's gotten so much worse, and that's because Vigor can now only heal yourself. That's fine for like playing solo. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't change our individual power, and but it does mean that there's no point running Troll King in a group, because you can't heal your friends with Troll King, and that it kind of sucks, because that's all I brought to a group before. I understand why they made Vigor only heal yourself. It was an issue before with other Stam classes, like, you know, Stamplars or Stamdens just stacking up and just casting Vigor and having ridiculous cross healing. But I feel like a better solution to that would have been you can only have one Vigor on yourself at a time, rather than your Vigor only affects you, you know? I like, duh. But whatever. It is what it is. Let's see, other things that I wanted to talk about. I guess potions are worth talking about. Let's talk about the potions that I use. I have a couple potions that I like. Tripots are the bread and butter this patch, because I've got on my front bar Camo Hunter, I don't need crit pots. So you can see I just have a ton of crit pots that I haven't used. And so I've been using tripots. I also have detect pots. These are detect, and they make me immune to knockback. They're great for killing that last little invisible person, or just not letting people get away, and I think that's fun. I don't like letting people get away from fights, and these help me to clean up at the end. Using them at the beginning of a fight is a little tough. I've done that before, and then I just don't have the sustain, and if I don't secure the kill when I use the detect pot, like I'm in deep trouble. And I've made it out of all those situations, but there have been a few times where I've thought to myself, that was a mistake. That was a bad idea. So, just be careful. If you need the recovery, you're going to notice not having it if you use a detect pot. So make sure you're only fighting one guy and not 3 or more. And then also I have kind of a stack of 1vx pots, which is like immovability pots that give you health, stamina, and immovability. It's great if you're going in for a combo and don't want to be CC'd before you do it. And of course, it's also great to use these before a combo because you're going to get your Clever Alchemist proc, and that's always nice. But you definitely miss out on the Magicka. And whether or not that's a big deal to you, I don't know, actually. I do like using these. These are cool, and they are helpful, but Magicka is really nice too. So, I mean, play around with it, see what works for you. It's going to depend on the fight that you're in at the moment. There will be times where you need to secure a kill and a move pot's just the way to go, and there are times where you're going to have to use a lot of Magicka to evade people or outplay them or maneuver around them, and that's when tripods are going to be nice. So nothing bad there. I'm not using any of the gold foods. I'm not using Artaeum or Bewitched. Don't give me enough recovery, and recovery's life right now, especially with this build. Since you already get max health, running any food that's going to give you max health, you're going to have so much health and no stam recovery. So I would recommend not doing that and just running the cheaper food, which is salt rice, and not worrying about your max health being too high and not worrying about your recovery. If you're going to use Artaeum for whatever reason, you're going to be really tanky, which is nice, but you're probably going to have to put like an infused recovery glyph or a regular recovery glyph on like a robust piece of jewelry. And that's not the worst thing ever. If you're struggling with staying alive, running Artaeum and then one recovery jewelry wouldn't be the worst option. You'd stay alive a lot better. If you're running in a group all the time, that might be better for you. But if you're 1vx, I feel like that damage is more important. The damage and recovery, the max stam, it's all there with salt rice. So that's how I play that. And let's talk about CP really quickly because I changed a little bit about my CP, and we'll just go through it real quick. These are kind of relevant. 1 point in a Siphoner so that you have a debuff on them at all times, so that when people purge, they don't purge everything. Warlord, Break Freeze, obviously really nice. I put a little bit into Sprinter and Bash. I bash a lot and I sprint a lot, so it's not the biggest deal. It's really important to have 120 in this tree so you get wind running. Wind running is super nice and I like it a lot. 56 into Mooncalf, I always do that because I'm Stam, right? And then I flip between 49 Arcanist, 15 Healthy, and 49 Healthy, 15 Arcanist, depending on whether or not I'm using Troll King. If I'm using Troll King, more into Healthy. That's going to buff Troll King a ton. And if I'm not using Troll King, no point in buffing my health recovery. I'll just get as much magic as I can. Shadow Ward, reduce the cost of block. I do block a lot, and I like having a little bit of Shadow Ward in there. Tumbling, obviously, I roll all the time, so that's important. I use 120 in Atro to get the Tactician passive, which sets people off balance when I roll dodge. I do like using that. Riposte is also legit. I get a much higher... When everything's buffed, my Riposte tooltip is like... It's over 10k for sure. When Alchemist is up, I can hit a Riposte that's like an 11k tooltip. And that's really funny because if someone is gap closing you, you've got Alchemist up, you block and then cast an ability, like whatever it is, but especially if it's a Relentless, you can totally one-shot people with like a light attack, Riposte, Relentless, and that's really funny. Mastered Arms is important because everything you do is direct damage, so that's good, and then I just kind of fill out that 120 with Physical Weapon Expert. I've taken everything out of Thaumaturge and put it into Mighty and Precise Strikes because now that I'm not using Poisonous Serpent, everything crits, so 66 Precise Strikes is nice. 64 into Mighty is nice, get that 13%. And then Piercing is my sink. I throw everything extra into Piercing. Defense, because I'm using 4 Impen, I use 58 Resistant. That's just about the right amount for if you're using 4 Impen. I'm using 2 medium armor focus. It's pointless. This is just my sync, so don't use that. And 2 into spell shield. Same basic thing. These are bad stars, but it's what I had left over. 56 ironclad. 32 hardy and elemental defender. I've thought about juicing these up a little bit and taking out of thick skinned. That's probably a good idea. Dots aren't that prevalent, but when you do get hit by dots, it's not super fun. So I might take some out of thick skinned and either put it into ironclad, which wouldn't be a bad idea, or a little bit more into hardy and LA defender. Both of those would probably be better, actually. I'm definitely going to change this and try it out in ironclad or something like that. 20% debuff to dots. It's not a dot meta. You don't need that. Quick recovery. I do like quick recovery. Having a little bit into here, I feel it. An extra 8% healing is nothing to sneeze at, and you'll like that for sure. So I don't like putting things into blessed because I don't have anything else here, and I like having, tactician and riposte and all these little things. Opportunist is obviously super important. Precise strikes or perfect strike is really important, and exploiter is probably the most important piece of CP that I have here. I'm always setting people off balance, and whether that's with surprise attack, venom arrow, or roll dodging, and so getting an extra 10% damage against them. Why not? Also, off balance was changed that once you knock someone over, it doesn't consume the off balance anymore. So if you knock someone over and then get an in cap, so like say, okay, let me just go through the whole scenario. You dodge roll, sets them off balance. You then do a medium attack weave. It knocks them over. You follow that immediately by the in cap. You're doing a medium attack in cap. That in cap is going to hit harder by 10%. And then everything after the in cap is going to get buffed by another 20%. So now you're getting that 20% and this 10% when you fire Relentless. And it is explosive. It is nuclear. You just destroy people. And that's actually super legit. So exploiter passive, really great, and between exploiter and tactician, you've got some pretty insane damage. Let me just show you like the kind of damage numbers that we're talking here, and kind of what they look like, and then we'll be done. Then we'll have everything. So here we go. Are you ready? Let's initiate combat. Woo! We're in combat. Actually, I think I just used my glyph. Yeah, I did. So give me a second here. Haha. Yeah, you like that riposte, baby? Okay. We're going to hit the Alchemist now. Do a little bit of that. And we've got 6k weapon damage here. Oh, that's right. 7k was when I had Nern. I switched to Sharpen pretty recently, so. It also gets higher when you have continuous attack. Continuous is really important. I would say play around continuous. That when you've got this much damage and so little recovery, having continuous attack really makes a difference. Another thing worth mentioning is that you actually get minor savagery as a Nightblade when you crit. I don't think everyone realizes that, but I believe that's hemorrhage. Yeah, it increases your crit damage by 10% in general, and then you get minor savagery when you do crit, and that brings you from 46% weapon crit up to 50. So like, let's get a crit. There's a crit. Now it's at 52%. So if you are continuing to attack someone and you just keep critting all the time, which you're probably going to with 50% crit and like 3 attacks per second, you're going to have that savagery buff all the time. And since now everything in my combo crits, that's kind of legit. And then let's see, one more thing I'm just going to answer while I'm here, because I know people are going to ask it, is why am I not using Poisonous Serpent anymore? Isn't that your favorite set of all time? Why, yes, it is, and I'm glad you asked. The main reason I'm not using Poisonous Serpent this patch is, A, I don't get as much time as I used to kill people. And if I did, I'd probably have to use a Defile set, because healing is so crazy right now. It's so crazy. So I'd probably use Defile instead of Poisonous Serpent. But since I'm going for maximum burst, Poisonous Serpent isn't. Well, actually, it is. Poisonous Serpent is great for burst, but what's kind of more relevant is Templars are very powerful. They were very powerful last patch, and they're very powerful this patch. So more than ever, when you're 1vxing, there will be at least a Templar, and with a Templar comes purges everywhere for everyone. Not just the Templar, but everyone in the group gets purges. And if you're relying on Venom Arrow being active on a person so that Poisonous Serpent can proc, you're going to be in trouble. Poisonous Serpent is still going to be really great on Dragonites, especially in non-CP where crits don't matter as much. That's when Poisonous Serpent is going to shine. I think the days of Poisonous Serpent being the #1 set on Stamblade are not going to be back until Templars are less popular. They're just so popular right now, right? And when everyone's getting purges, I'm not getting a lot of mileage out of Poisonous Serpent. And that in conjunction with this huge buff to Alchemist, 5 more seconds is a huge buff. That's a huge buff. And I want to use it. So that combined with this huge buff to Alchemist has made the crazy weapon damage burst build kind of my preferred. And you can see that in my gameplay. You can see me playing around it. You can see the Clever Alchemist come up on my arms, and it looks legit. And it's kind of scary, and I like it. And then and you can see how fast people die. Like, it really is nuclear. So if you have any questions, as always, please let me know. I'm super happy to talk about build and theory, both in the comments where you can ask questions and on my Discord. You are always more than welcome to join me in Discord. It's linked in the description, and I hope to see you there. We have a good time, and a lot of build ideas get thrown around, and I really enjoy the little community. So if you want to be part of that, please come join us. And otherwise, good luck out there. Stamblade is hard this patch, but if you can make it work, you will be immortalized among the ranks of good Stamblades. So that's kind of exciting. Wasn't true in the past, but it is now. We've gone from boys to men. So go out there and kick some butt, and hopefully I'll see you out there.